Now that the Federal Reserve has surpassed all-time highs, 30, 40 years of consumer price index with these numbers that are off the chart, it looks like finally we have an argument, if the politicians really cared, to basically point out that the Federal Reserve has breached a contract or an agreement between the United States of America, which represents the people, in regards to maintaining their promise of price stability as the sticker prices on the shelves of all the items we need continue to go sky high. So it looks like there's been a breach of contract, or is inflation in of itself the ultimate breach on a contract of trust? Let's talk about this. All right, so I want to take a quick minute, share some thoughts. My mind is racing, and I just shared a little snippet on Twitter as well as Instagram in reference to last night talk, where I basically brought up the old contract agreement between the government and the central bank, the Federal Reserve of America from 1928, and how if you look at just the tweaking of words, where we used to have 50, 60 years ago, or actually 70 plus years ago, the terms of service or terms of use for the notes that we have in our hands here, it had a nice statement that gave it more validity for it being used as money or redeemable for money. Whereas in nowadays, the terms of use for these instruments here are completely ruining society as well as people's opportunity to save in these instruments here. So I just want to take a minute and share a quick thought. So as I see here, the PPI reached all-time high, or relatively a newer high of 9.6, give or take. And it got me thinking about the legality of this current monetary heist is underway. And so when I put that tweet out there about the terms of use, and so not only do we not really consider the fact that this instrument here, even though it's a debt liability, a bill of credit, it's an IOU between two parties. We got the United States Treasury and the Federal Reserve, and we the people, because the Treasury represents the financial matters for our country, we're forced to use these instruments here. And as I think about it now, if we had any a right to pitch a fit and to argue and to basically just really clap back at our politicians, it's at the fact that the Federal Reserve Act, the Federal Reserve Bank itself, their only two mandates they gave themselves, or Congress gave them umpteen decades ago, they're not living up to their half of the bargain. And so the one I'm referring to now is the price stability, the idea that they've given this notion that 2% inflation over time is healthy for the markets as well as keep the economy rolling. But they've shot past that, and it is beyond alarming. But yet, if you've been paying attention and awake and aware, you've expected this for quite some time. But one of the things that bother me most is trying to figure out how to reach more people who don't really realize how dangerous it is not to really look at the fine print of things. So I want to piggyback on this note right here. So, Federal Reserve note, we know what it is. But this ultimately is a debt instrument. It's a contract between two parties. And ultimately, with this inflation and PPI and all these other measurements going bananas right now, to me, that constitutes a breach of contract. Because if the Federal Reserve and the Treasury are supposed to work together on behalf of the people to provide price stability, nothing is stable, nothing makes sense. But then again, no one seems to really care, because we know this is a part of a greater agenda of resetting our monetary system. But for those that are awake and in tune, we have a very interesting fight on our hands, because not only do we need to use these things because they're legal tender in the short term, but this is not lawful money. And I want to piggyback on that tweet I just put out there, talking about there's a difference between being legal and lawful. And as I said, over time, they've changed the word. They've tweaked the words on these instruments here. And it's flown under the radar for quite some time now. But I think it's time to highlight that just a little bit so people can realize that these instruments here do not belong to you. These are contracts between two parties. You happen to be the third party, which is the user of these instruments here. But this little term of service right here, this term of use, it says this note is legal tender for all debts. It doesn't say this note is legal tender for all debts and for you to save and depend upon it for your financial future. That's not what this is for. So ultimately, this contract, just in the terminology here, and mind you, I'm not into the legal field. I don't know. Just some thoughts I want to share with you. But if these terms of use right here constitutes the agreement I have with these two parties here, this note is legal tender, meaning that I must extend this to you, and you must accept it because it's legal. That doesn't make it lawful, because it says nothing about savings. It says for debts. So ultimately, this thing is meant to circulate. It's never designed to park and stand still, because right now, with the current environment we're in now, with all these numbers going berserk, these instruments here become a liability for you to hold on to for a long period of time.
I mean, it really is interesting to see these European countries move to negative interest rates. And in a way, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more pickup in the demand for cash. Cash is not a very convenient store of value.
And so, breach of contract. Inflation is definitely a breach of contract. Not only, in inflation, the definition of inflation is the expansion of the money supply, and that's a part of the Ponzi scheme. But then again, when it comes to these liability notes here, people think we associate the debt and numbers with this instrument here because this is what it's denominated in, and all along we are the ones that suffers because even in the fine print, this note is legal tender for all debts. Holding this instrument here based upon the stuff that they're doing makes it that much tougher to actually pay off your debts. You're going to need more instruments like this to actually be able to pay off your debts. So in and of itself, inflation, price increases, you name it, however we want to label it for this video here, is hazardous to your financial future. And as I always say before, all dollars are not created equal. We have the Federal Reserve note contract, which has already been broken. So the confidence game, this is all about confidence. This thing is basically treading on water right now. So keep that in mind when it comes to these instruments here, because these are not yours to keep. These are meant to be spent. They're meant to circulate. Saving these will be financially disastrous for your future. Well, I always say here, we have another version of a dollar form. This is also from the United States Mint. This is lawful money. And so this right here was always designed to be the claim on money, not the receipt itself. So just have some thoughts I want to rant out real quick. But once again, just because it's legal doesn't make it lawful. Therefore, it's up to you to determine the difference, because if not, you're going to be stuck holding the bags. And that's the last thing I'm sure you want if you knew what was at stake. So once again, thought I would share this. Let me know your comments. Let me know other ways and ideas on how to reach people at this current time, because it's pivotal right now. And so I think it's more important to get this message out to people so that they can be aware that just this breach of contract here with this term here has already ruined and destroyed people's future. I think it's still time to save some people before the complete devastation happens in the upcoming future. But anyway, tired of rant. Thought I would just share this. It's been a while since I've done this. Let me know your thoughts. Also, take this video, share it with your family and friends just so it gives them something to read. Have them read this contract here so they can be aware that the Federal Reserve has already broken it and our government is not in a position to be able to go to bat on our behalf to help us get back to lawful money. But anyway, it is what it is. Peace.